This is a stimulus update and daily news report. Today is a big day, and this week is a huge week. The White House is confident that the Build Back Better plan will pass this week. I'm going to play a video clip from the top economic advisor being held accountable for all the inflation predictions he had, as well as President Biden's approval rating being at an all-time low and the vice president's approval rating being even lower. I'm also going to give you the Republicans' perspective of what Ted Cruz has to say about the big spending bill. We'll also go over some other stimulus check news. 3 stimulus checks are going out this week, 2 of them today. Also, we'll go over this article, some Americans eligible for a 4th stimulus check in 2022, and I'll give you some other more important updates as well. Hope you're having a more than Monday. If you appreciate the fact-based, fast-paced updates, hit the like button down below. Let's start with stimulus check news first. So today, more than 500,000 Mainers set to receive $285 disaster relief payment from the state. So that's going out today, November 15th. If you live in Maine and you worked anytime during the pandemic, then you get a $285 check today. Also, child tax credits are going out today, November 15th. So child tax credit payments set to go out Monday, could be the next to last unless Congress acts. So basically November 15th, then December 15th, and then you're getting a 6-month lump sum, the other half of the child tax credit in 2022. And we don't know what's going to happen with the future of child tax credits. It could be a year, could be 5 years, could be permanent. Although Joe Manchin wants to have requirements, income caps, as well as work requirements with that. So we don't know what's going to happen with the child tax credit. All we know is that we're going to get November 15th, December 15th, and the other half. We don't know what's going to happen after that. Also, California stimulus checks, nearly 800,000 more Golden State stimulus checks are going out. So this is 784,000 payments with a total valuation of $555 million going out this week. It says it's going out, scheduled to start going out starting Monday, today. So yeah, more stimulus checks for the Golden State stimulus checks of $500 and $600. So it could be as much as $1,100 for one person. And then when it comes to the 4th stimulus check petition, the $2,000 per month to every American, currently is at 2,957,000 signatures. This is for the general stimulus check for the public. So far, hasn't worked its way into any bill, and doesn't look like it's going to happen, especially if the vote is happening this week. Looks like a 4th stimulus check has not made it in there. Also, this article right here, some Americans eligible for 4th stimulus check in 2022. So what this is referring to is children that were born in babies that were born in 2021. So parents who had a child in 2021 are eligible for another stimulus payment in 2022. So any parent who has a single parent less than 75,000, a couple less than 150,000, then if they file their taxes, they get $1,400 for their baby that they had in 2021. Next, let's talk about the big spending bill, that reconciliation bill, the Build Back Better plan. What's happening with that? But first, let's talk about the approval ratings are at an all-time low. So vice presidents don't just break through. Why are Kamala Harris's approval ratings lower than Biden? So Kamala Harris having a rough time in office as well. Approval ratings really low, as well as President Biden. So Biden job approval at record low in Washington post ABC News poll. So numbers keep going low and low. So the approval rating for President Biden has slumped to a record low of 41% in a new poll. Let me know down in the comments below. What do you think about President Biden so far? Whether you're a Democrat or Republican, is he doing a good job, bad job? Is this a slump? Is he going to do better in the future, or is it just bad overall? According to these numbers, not looking too good. So the White House is confident that the Build Back Better will pass the House this week. Here's a video clip from CNN with Brian Deese, who is the top economic advisor, being held accountable for a lot of things he said. It's kind of a tough interview here. Check this out.
Inflation, as prices in the U.S. surge more than they have in 30 years, according to new data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And as the holidays approach, Americans are seeing higher prices on everything from gas to groceries. This week, the president changed his message on the issue, acknowledging for the first time inflation is, quote, worrisome and, quote, one of the most pressing economic concerns of the American people. A response, perhaps, to the political reality. A brand new poll from the Washington Post, ABC News, shows Biden's approval rating sinking to 41%, a new low, largely because of a negative shift among Democrats and independents, as 70% of the American people, according to this poll, rate the economy negatively. 70%. 63% of the American people think Biden has not accomplished much so far. Joining us now to discuss, top economic advisor to President Biden, Brian Deese. Brian, thanks for joining us. So let's start on this dire inflation report. Take a look at how much prices have risen over the last year. Regular gas prices up more than 50%, utility gas 28%, used cars, beef, pork, eggs, all up. This new Washington Post poll shows 70% of those polled view the economy negatively, 38% say the economy is in poor condition. How concerned are you and the president about inflation, and what specifically are you doing to fix it?
Well, inflation is high right now, and it is affecting consumers in their pocketbook and also in their outlook for the economy. But those concerns underscore why it's so important that we move forward on the Build Back Better legislation, this legislation that the House is going to consider this week. This, more than anything, will go at the costs that Americans face. You talk about healthcare, one of the biggest costs that American families face. This will lower prescription drug prices, put a cap on prescription drug costs for our seniors. Childcare, not only a big cost driver for families, but a big impediment for more parents and women to get back into the workforce. This bill will cut the cost of childcare by more than half for most working families. And housing, too, a big cost driver for families. This bill will build affordable homes all around the country to make it easier for families to afford housing and also to move to places where the job opportunities are. All of these things go right at lowering costs for American families, and this bill is fully paid for. It's not going to add to inflationary pressures, quite the opposite, because we're going to pay for everything in this bill by raising taxes on big companies, large corporations, and the highest income Americans. So there's an urgency to act. The House is going to consider this bill this week, and we're looking forward to making progress in getting this done.
Right, but nothing you just mentioned, assuming that everything you're saying is accurate and comes to pass the way you want, nothing you mentioned would bring down grocery prices, would bring down gas prices. For instance, let's just take gas prices for a second. Is President Biden willing to open the Strategic Petroleum Reserve? Is he willing to stop gas and oil exports so as to alleviate the gas price issue at the pump?
Well, we are very committed to do everything that we can to make sure that American consumers don't bear the brunt of high gas prices and volatile energy prices. And the president has made clear that all options are on the table. We're monitoring the situation very carefully. One of the things that we're really focused on right now is making sure that American consumers don't actually get taken advantage of. One of the things that we've seen in oil and gas markets is because of consolidation, we have fewer large companies actually controlling the market. And so at moments like this, there's a real concern of price gouging or market manipulation that could put consumers could actually harm consumers. So we've asked the Federal Trade Commission to take a very close look at that right now in the current market conditions. And we're also engaging internationally with our counterparts to make sure that other oil-producing nations are not taking advantage of the strength of the recovery and actually profiting at the American consumer's expense. So all those issues are on the table, including Strategic Petroleum Reserve. We're monitoring that closely, and we'll continue to do so.
So, Brian, you saw the bad poll numbers for the president when it comes to the economy. I don't know how much of a factor this was, but President Biden finally publicly acknowledged inflation is worrisome this week. I want to play some sound of what you and President Biden were saying a few months ago in June.
By the way, talk of inflation. The overwhelming consensus is going to pop up a little bit and then go back down. No one's talking about this great,
To the degree that people are focused on inflationary pressures in the short term, that really is not the issue.
Do you think that you and the president were wrong and inflation is not a short-term pop up a little bit and then go back down issue?
No, I don't think so, Jake. I think what we have said consistently is that the pandemic and the economy are interlinked. And certainly we saw, just as the Delta variant posed real health challenges to the economy, it also had economic impacts. More people were consuming goods at home, watching TV rather than buying a new television, rather than going out to the movies and spending on services. And so that's added to some of the supply chain challenges that we face. But we're seeing these price increases as inflation globally because of the supply chain challenges associated with COVID. That's why we're going right at attacking those issues right now as well. In the very immediate term, we're working with ports around the country to get goods moving more quickly through the economy. And this infrastructure bill, the bipartisan bill that the president will sign tomorrow, is the most significant step that we will have taken in decades to actually invest in the arteries that help move goods more quickly through our economy, more cheaply through our economy, and was designed that we can move out quickly on some areas like our ports to try to start providing some relief. So we have been focused on this issue. We continue to be focused on this issue in the short term, but also addressing these medium-term issues as well.
What are your thoughts on what Brian Deese has to say? Are they empty promises as usual? Is Is inflation transitory or temporary, as he said in the past? Are things going to change? Let me know your thoughts on all that down in the comments below. Next up is Ted Cruz, who is a Republican senator from Texas, talking about why the spending bill is not a good idea. I like to give multiple perspectives on this channel since I'm an independent myself, and I like to see different angles and get different ideas from different sources. So check this out, what Ted Cruz has to say.
This week, we learned consumer prices for everything from milk and eggs to gasoline has skyrocketed 11.9% on an annualized basis in the month of October, as millions of workers are dropping out of the workforce because of this bad policy. Everyday items like eggs, bacon, baby food soaring because of all of the free money this administration and the Federal Reserve are serving up. Yet Nancy Pelosi and Bernie Sanders want to spend more of your money, and they'll make sure you pay for it with higher taxes. Joining me right now on the spending negotiations and whether we will see a vote on this bill is Texas Senator Ted Cruz. He sits on the Senate Joint Economic, Judiciary, and Foreign Affairs Committees. Senator, it's always a pleasure to see you. Thanks very much for being here.
Maria, good morning. Good to be with you.
So we understand Joe Biden will sign the infrastructure bill into law tomorrow. Where does the larger, massive spending plan stand now?
Well, that spending plan, they're still negotiating, but I got to tell you, the trillions that are being spent, the trillions in debt that is being racked up, it is historic and not in a good way. It kind of reminds me of that television show, that 70s show. It feels like Joe Biden is Jimmy Carter all over again, and we're seeing skyrocketing inflation. We've seen gas lines. We've seen a Middle East crisis. We've seen hostages. We've seen surrender, in this case in Afghanistan. All of these problems are replicating, and it turns out cause and effect still operates, that when you spend trillions of dollars, you cause inflation. And you know what is stunning about that, Maria? Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and the rest of the administration, they don't care. You played the clip a moment ago of Jen Psaki laughing about inflation and saying, well, that's really what we want. Look, they want you not to be able to fill up gas in your car. They want your electricity bill to be higher. They want your heating bill to be higher. And the cruelty, of course, it doesn't impact them. The Democratic elites will still fly on their private planes everywhere they go. And the working people, they just say, let them eat cake. And it is really cruel what is happening after spending $1.9 trillion on a so-called COVID relief bill that wasn't COVID relief, and now spending $1.2 trillion on a so-called infrastructure bill, much of which is not infrastructure. They now want to move on to Bernie Sanders' socialist budget. This was the budget that was originally $3.5 trillion, or that was actually closer to 5.5 if you scored it honestly. Where it stands right now is they're battling with Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema. They've got 48 Democrats ready to completely bankrupt the country and put trillions of dollars of taxes on the American people. And they have 2 Democrats who are saying at least tap the brakes, slow down. Every Republican opposes this boondoggle because the American people are paying for it. And unfortunately, we'll have to see if they can get 50 Democrats to agree to do substantially more damage and drive inflation up even more.
There is a report this morning that says Joe Manchin may try to kick this can down the road and push this Build Back Better agenda into 2022. Do you think that there's truth to that? And on that climate summit, it's a good point that you just made, because we did get the scoring of that. And the hypocrisy of it shows that the footprint of that climate conference was double the last one. I mean, the visual of Joe Biden and his 85 vehicle lineup of vehicles in Europe was just beyond. But the question about inflation, Senator, and where this Build Back Better agenda stands, do you think we will see these price hikes continue as we go into Thanksgiving, where we're looking at one of the most expensive meals on record?
Well, they're projecting that this will be the most expensive Thanksgiving we've ever had because we've seen food prices go up. But, the hypocrisy, Maria, is striking that this administration, the cruelty is the point. They are celebrating that the cost to fill your tank, that when you go and fill your tank in your truck, you're spending $100, $150. They're celebrating because they think that will eventually advance their Green New Deal, their green agenda at the expense of working people. Now, mind you, the hypocrisy is such, it doesn't impact their life. John Kerry has a private jet that he helpfully explained for someone like him, it's really the only way to travel. They don't believe this nonsense. The same thing is true with masks, where they demonstrate their hypocrites. We saw just a week ago Chuck Schumer dancing away in Puerto Rico with no masks in sight. Same thing Barack Obama did in Martha's Vineyard. Same thing Nancy Pelosi did in Northern California. They are very big on rules for the little people, and they view the American people as their subjects, like King George, and they don't apply the rules to themselves. And when it comes to, I think a lot of people across this country are really having buyer's remorse and are shocked, because this is not what Joe Biden campaigned on. This is not, he said he was a reasonable centrist moderate. I got to admit, the Joe Biden that swore me into the Senate 9 years ago, the Joe Biden that a lot of us have known for a long time, we don't know where he is. I mean, we're wondering if that guy is tied up in the basement of the White House, because the people setting the agenda here are radicals. And I think the American people want, the reason we saw such great election results in Virginia and New Jersey are that the American people, both blue states, but the American people said, hold on a second, this is crazy. And I'm here to predict right now, 2022 is going to be a wave election. It's going to be like 2010. Republicans are going to retake the House. They're going to retake the Senate. And the amazing thing is, the crazies in the Democratic Party, their analysis of the solution to Virginia and New Jersey, they say, we need more crazy. We need to go even further. Yeah. This is going to be a difficult year, but I do think we're on the path back, as the American people are really unhappy with the agenda Joe Biden's pushing.
Well, you would have thought that the Democrats saw Virginia and New Jersey as a wake-up call to slow things down. In fact, it's the opposite. You had an opportunity there to stop this whole agenda, but your colleagues decided not to go that path. You had 19 of your colleagues in the Senate vote for the infrastructure package. You had 13 in the House vote for the infrastructure package. What exactly did that do? Now, because they did that, the path is wide open for much higher taxes for the rest of us to pay.
Yes.
Isn't that true?
It's exactly true, and it's maddening. I can tell you, in the Senate, we spent week after week at lunch yelling at each other, with most of the Republicans saying to those who wanted to support this infrastructure bill, why are you doing it? Why are you facilitating the Bernie Sanders socialist budget? They argued, no, if we pass this, it'll make the other less likely to pass. That never made sense to me. The Democrats never made any agreement to that. They didn't say, we won't pursue the Bernie Sanders budget. What they said is, okay, we'll take both. We'll take 1.2 trillion here, and then we'll take 5.5 trillion here. That's what the Democrats said. And I will tell you, in the House, for the House Republicans who voted for this, Joe Biden and the Democrats, their agenda was on the rails. It was failing. It was on the way to going down. And what those Republicans did is they breathed life into it. They gave Joe Biden a political win. He'll now go across the country touting, look at this big bipartisan win. And that additional momentum, unfortunately, makes it more likely that they whip their Democrats into shape and pass some multi-trillion-dollar spending bill on top of this that will include, unfortunately, trillions in new taxes. That's what the stakes are all about. I still hope it doesn't happen, and I hope Joe Manchin does what he suggested, which is to say, hey, let's kick this till next year. Let's wait until inflation is licked, till we've stopped inflation. Then we can talk about the next package. I think that would show a lot of wisdom. That would be a very statesman-like act for Joe Manchin to do.
Ted Cruz definitely had a lot to say, and it's definitely a different perspective from the Democrats and Brian Deese, the White House economic advisor I showed you before. What are your thoughts on what Ted Cruz has to say? Do you agree, disagree? So that is all the stimulus news I have for you today to hopefully brighten your day a bit. Here's my daughter Bella's tip of the day.
Hi guys, this is Bella.
Thank you so much for watching, and I appreciate you being a part of the Wise Flies community. I'm actually going to give more $200 checks this week, so if you watched it up until this point, you're in the know. I haven't really fully announced it yet, but I will do it any day now, so stay tuned for that. If you want to check out any of my other videos, you could click up here or down here, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care, be safe,